just to give everybody a little bit of background, Katie is a real estate entrepreneur, active investor, and redeveloper, which she'll have to explain that to us. She started out investing in 2006, buying a one-bedroom condo for $17,000, and then house hacked her horse barn by turning a space into an apartment and rented it out. She began buying vacant fourplexes out of bankruptcy, renovating them, leasing them up, and selling them to investors before pivoting to fixing and flipping single-family houses in her hometown of Bryan, Texas. Katie spent 9 years in commercial banking and 7 years on the executive team of a startup company for a real estate developer. These career positions served her well when she took the leap to quit her W-2 job and become a full-time real estate investor. In recent years, her vision and passion has expanded beyond flipping houses to include reviving dilapidated and abandoned buildings and in and around the city center of her hometown, and redeveloping city lots to construct beautifully designed mixed-use buildings. Her portfolio includes over 56,000 square feet of office, retail, and residential space, with an additional 20,000 square feet in the design phase and another 30,000 square feet in the acquisition phase. Okay.
That was a mouthful. Who wrote that?
It was. Clearly, she's very qualified. So any kind of question that you have, Katie can answer it. She's also got kids, and some have already left for college. So, I think you're married. She's married. So she's doing all of this.
Super cute cowboy.
To a super cute cowboy. She'll have to tell us how she found him. So whatever questions you have, make sure you add those to the chat. But Katie, talk to us about that when you got started with that $17,000 house hack, and then how that transitioned into renting out your barn. That has got to be the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, definitely. So first off, if y'all just hear me drone on about my past, y'all are going to get bored and fall asleep. So totally ask questions. Feel free to stop, throw them in the chat. I want to add value, not just tell you like the chronological order of my life. But, I was a weird kid growing up. Like, I always had this weird fascination with money, and I'm not even sure where it came from, but I would iron my dollar bills on the ironing board. I mean, I wanted to be in order, and I don't really know where that came from. I was always fascinated why some people had money, why sometimes we had a lot of money, why sometimes we had no money. And so the best way to be like an outcast at school is try and talk to your middle school friends about money and how much money their family has. And so basically, like, I had this interest, but I didn't know what to do with it. So instead, I went to high school, went to college. I was the first person to graduate from college in my family. And I entered the market like at a crazy hot hiring market. Corporate people were just wooing college students, bidding up salaries, signing bonuses, letting you pick what city you wanted to live in. I was like, wow, like, I must be impressive. All these people are willing to give me a job. So I didn't worry about my childhood dream of entrepreneurship or any of that. I went to work in corporate America at a national bank instead. And I actually loved it. I loved the people. I got to learn how to do credit. I got to entertain at fancy sports venues. But about 7 years in, I had two pivotal things happen. One, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that totally rekindled my spirit of entrepreneurship. And it kind of like gave me a path. Since I hadn't ever been around anyone who had done it before, I learned everyone that I thought I was looking up to was actually just self-employed. And so it was just eye-opening for me. And then the other one is my son took his first steps, and I was at work. I was on the phone with my husband. And so I got to hear like his sheer excitement as he explained to me what was happening, but man, it crushed my soul. So we quickly decided we're going to quit our job. We're going to move back home. And in the process, I was like, well, I got to start buying real estate because that's what Robert Kiyosaki said to do. And I don't know if y'all have ever Googled Robert Kiyosaki's name, but if you do, he has as many haters as he does as people who love him. So
Yes,
it's like,
he does.
yeah, and I did credit underwriting. So I learned how to identify everything that could possibly go wrong. So I had this fear, like, what if he was a fraud? And what if people were lying and you can't make money in real estate and the tenant tears it up? So it's like, well, how can I do this and minimize as much risk as possible? So I found a low income condo that cost me $17,000 and already had a tenant in it paying $500. I figured if everything went wrong and I lost all $17,000, like, it would not materially impact my life. And I learned so much from that condo. My business partner also bought a condo in that same complex. Her tenant burned it down. She is on drugs and fell asleep on the couch while she was cooking, caught on fire. My tenant used to come and pay cash at my office, and he just didn't show up one day. I go over there, the door's busted in, there's nobody there. I start Googling him, he's in prison. So like I learned a lot from that condo, but it wasn't a deal I was trying to get rich on. I was just trying to prove the concept, like, does real estate work? And it proved that to me. And so it was a few years before we did our next deal, but we started buying fourplexes, and they were out of bankruptcy. And I wanted to like find a way, in case expenses are more than people were telling you, or I'm making the numbers say. I'm telling you guys, I am always full of fear when it comes to making like that first step. It's like, how can I minimize the risk? So I like the idea of government paying us. So I thought, we're going to do, Section 8 housing. So I went and sat in the HUD office, and I talked to the lady that issued the vouchers. And I was like, how much rent will y'all pay? And I'm telling you, she said they would pay $950 for a 3-bedroom house. I was like, well, what if it's a fourplex? Doesn't matter. What if it's small? Doesn't matter. What if the other fourplexes are paying less than that? Doesn't matter. As long as there were less than 4 units in the building, they didn't ask for other rent. And if it was 3-bedroom, they paid $950. Well, these fourplexes that I was looking at, the market rent was $600. So everyone told me that'll never work. If it would work, people would already be doing it. And I was like, but what if it does work? Like, what if we really could get that much rent? So we did it. It made money actually at market rents, but we're like, if we could figure this arbitrage out, like we can make a lot of money. So we bought the first one out of foreclosure. So it had no tenants. We fixed it up. And sure enough, we got tenants for $850. The education was that we had to teach the tenants, it doesn't matter what your rent is, you pay based on your income. So if you can make $200 payments based on your income, doesn't matter if rent's $1,000 or $10,000, you still only have to pay $200. So most of the education came on the tenant side when they would ask how much rent is. And it was a cash cow. We bought 2 more. So we had 3 of those fourplexes, and learned we hated it. Like, we hated maintenance. We loved fixing them up and getting them rented. We hated collecting rent. We hated wondering if the tenant story was true. We hated trying to decide if we should be nice or mean or strict or kick them out or let them stay. Became super cynical. So we said, you know what? Let's sell these fourplexes to investors, and let's do what we like, which is fixing and flipping. So we actually didn't hold them for that long. It's probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And then we sold them all. So, Section 8 housing, I think people do it very successfully. It was not just about Section 8 housing. That was a big part of it. And it is not equal all over the country, like in Washington, D.C. and San Francisco and super high income levels. Like it's just middle-class people whose income cannot keep up with the price of the market. Where we're at, that's not really the case. Really low-income housing here is primarily for people who don't have jobs or have a hard time keeping a job. So some of the tenants were great, but most of them, they just weren't. They didn't respect the property. They got themselves in situations that caused lots of drama. So we sold them and we started flipping houses. And the first house, I bet we put in 20 offers before we finally got one accepted. And my business partner is my mom. So it's my mom and I, we're 2 chicks. And we were like, our contractor's really going to like take us serious? And the general answer is no. So when you find a good one, it's great, but it is kind of fun to play dumb and just listen to some of the crazy stuff they will tell you. Like, we're women, but we're not dumb. Like, what you're saying doesn't even make sense. So it was a little bit of a hurdle. So I had a buddy who was a GC, and I was like, if you could just like be at that first meeting, like a presence, that way, like your reputation kind of validates us. And it really did help. And once we found the ones that appreciated women and could work with us and we could work with them, like it was a pretty easy transition, but it was a challenge at first. And so we just started flipping houses, and that took off. We loved it. We became known for that. My business partner has been a realtor in the market for 45 years. And so we would get, once we started flipping houses, that first one took forever. But once we started, like we would get calls from realtors. He's like, this house is horrible. We can't list it. Would y'all just buy it? So it kind of created a little bit of a deal flow for us. And then we just drove around. I mean, we have a relatively small market. So we'd just drive around and start calling people, sending letters, knocking on doors. And it really took off. And it worked great for a number of years. But, we started all this so that we wouldn't have a job. And here we are, like we've just created a job for ourselves. If you don't get the next house, you're going to be out of a job and out of money. And so in the last few years, we've kind of repositioned and we've done the redevelopment thing. And we've tried to figure out like, what kind of assets could we own that we would love, that we would want to have long-term. And really it's the lower maintenance ones. So we wanted new construction, we wanted commercial if we could, and in an area that was really being revitalized. And so anyway, so that's our market. So I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to let you like ask me questions and direct me, and you guys throw some stuff in the chat box too.
That's a great story. And it's always awesome to hear everyone's stories because we talked a couple weeks ago with somebody who specializes in student housing and she loves it. And I hate student housing. Like you, I tried it. And in the beginning, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And a couple months later, I'm like, what the heck have I done? And then I sold all my student housing. So I'm on the flip side of you. I freaking love my Section 8. Similar story. Somebody taught me that I could rent mobile homes that were 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms for the same amount as a house. And I'm like, I can rent a mobile home for $1,200 a month. Seriously? Yes. And it's been really great. So it's wonderful to hear everyone's stories, and kind of like you were talking about with Robert Kiyosaki, how he has just as many haters. So it's nice to hear somebody to have both sides of that story. And what was your experience with Section 8 versus what was my experience? No different than the student housing. So thank you for sharing that part with us, because not everybody always talks about the bad side of some of that stuff.
It's the fun side.
But we're dying to hear about the barn becoming a rental unit. So we want to hear that story.
Okay. So when my son took his first steps and I missed it, we were like, okay, we made a decision super fast. I'm going to quit my job and we're going to move back to my hometown. Well, my hometown is the home of Texas A&M. So I also hate student housing because now not only like to optimize it, you have to rent every room on its own lease if you're really going to optimize it. So now around here, it's all 4-bedroom and 5-bedroom houses. So you're going to have 4 or 5 leases of 18-year-old spoiled children, and you have to deal with their parents too. So it's really like having to deal with twice as many. Yeah. So we don't really care for student housing either, but what we love are the professors. And so that's really our target market, or people who work at A&M who also don't want to live next to students. And that's kind of who we cater to. So we moved back to our hometown. It's a pretty expensive hometown. And my husband's a cowboy. I grew up on horses. We breed and train horses. So it's not like we could just go to a subdivision and buy a house. Like we're coming toting horses, dogs, cows, all that. So we started looking around. It was like, oh my gosh, like we cannot afford these rents. So the place that we found was not a really nice house. It was a nice house with a moderate amount of land. It already had a horse barn, an arena, a round pen, like it had all the elements, but we couldn't afford it. So the barn had like this extra room that was a concreted floor that they stored like their motorcycle and stuff in. And I was like, if we turn that into an apartment and we rent it for $700, like that's more than a third of our rent. And all of a sudden it like makes it market rent. So it was totally out of necessity. So we went and got prefab cabinets from the little local surplus warehouse and we threw them in there. And it already had a bathroom because the guy used it as his shop. So it was just one wide open room. It had a bathroom on one end. And then we added a wall on the other end to make a closet. And we rented it, and that's been 14 years ago. And we've probably had a handful of tenants, usually a college student, a vet student, something like that. And my husband works from home, so he has to manage that. So the requirement for interviewing for that is my husband has to like you, which isn't always easy. And so it can only be a single person. That's all the septic tank can handle. and you can only have one car because we don't want you killing our grass, parking too many vehicles out here. And we've rented it and it's worked great. And I can't really like imagine ever not renting it.
It's interesting that you say that, because people who haven't done this before and they're used to having all of their personal space, they can't possibly imagine doing something like that. And I had a similar situation after I got divorced and I bought a house. I bought this house that had this separate section in the garage that I finished out and turned into an apartment. And that garage is detached from the house. So similar to the barn not being attached to the house. And I wanted to rent that out. And after getting that income from that apartment, and having somebody out there is not relevant. I can't grasp the idea of not using that space for something else, because of the income that you get. It just, the way you start thinking about money, once you learn how to make money. I can even remember getting, a quote for new window treatments. And at this point I was already making plenty of money, and they came in and they said, it's going to be $10,000. I'm like, do you know what I can do with $10,000? I can buy another duplex with $10,000. Like, exactly. I don't need window treatments. So once you get that mindset of making the money make money for you, you make your decisions a whole lot differently.
Absolutely. And like we flip houses, so which is perfect because you want to try this new style, but you don't want to have to like be married to it because you don't know if you're going to like it, which is perfect for flipping houses. Like, you just try whatever the latest fad is, and as long as it's nice and it's relevant, it'll sell. Now, if you were to walk into my house, I mean, I have these horrible tile cabinets. The tiles are falling off. The hinges are broken on the cabinet door. Like, it's a wreck. I got my roof leaked and it's a wreck. People are always like, how can you flip houses? I'm like, well, if I put money in this house, every time I mention selling it, everybody in the family starts crying. So I don't want to sink money into this house if they're not going to let me sell it. So we totally neglect our house. We spend all our money on things that are going to make us money. And one day when they're ready to sell the house, we'll fix it up too, so I can optimize how much money we can get from it.
It's funny how that works out. And so you've come a long way. You're doing a whole lot bigger projects now. You've got some investors and some different people that you bring in when you're doing deals. Talk to us about how that's progressed.
Okay. So when I moved back here and I went to work for that company that was a real estate, where I was the real estate developer, the two owners of the company, they were serial entrepreneurs. Like, they'd started many businesses before. I've been acquainted to one of the partners, admire them from afar. So it's like, it would be amazing to work with them because they're really the first truly like business people, not self-employed people that I had access to. So I basically was like, hey guys, I want to come work for y'all. I don't know what I do, but let's try and make this work. And they're like, we'd love to have you. So they'd love to have me for a 30% pay cut. And I was like, yes, please. And then I structured my salary to be as low as possible just to cover our expenses, and told them, I want you to pay me everything else in a bonus. I remember the first time they surprised me with the salary increase. I was very gracious and I said, thank you. And they was like, don't do that again, because I don't want to increase my salary. I want to increase my bonus so that I could take that chunk of money and use it for down payments to try and do this whole real estate thing. So that's really how we got started, and to minimize the risk. Because I don't know if y'all are like me, but if you throw it in my paycheck, like, I'm going to spend it. Even with the best of intentions, if it's in my checking account, I'm going to spend it. And so these guys, I learned a lot from. They ended up selling the company. I got a little bit of a bonus that equaled about 1 year's worth of salary. And that's when I decided this is my chance to bet on myself. I'm going to give myself 1 year to go and try and do real estate full time and see if I could make it work. And that was in 2015, took the leap. And it's been great. It has not been easy. It has not always been steady, but it really has been great. So now we've gone from flipping houses and making a regular paycheck to trying to figure out how can we take some of that money and like create lasting cash flow. So in our town, which I don't know if where you guys are from. I'd love to know where you are from. Is it more like small Midwest type America, or is it like larger cities? But I know a lot of like midtown cities across the country are experiencing this like revitalization of their downtown. Like, it's kind of like this hip, cool place. And that's totally happening in our downtown. When I grew up here, it was boarded up and it wasn't safe. You came for the feed store and to buy your cowboy hats and to eat Mexican food. But other than that, it wasn't safe to be hanging out down here. And now the city's invested a lot of money and it's totally turned around. and we love it. So there was an old building on Main Street that had walls and a roof and dirt floors and a cistern in the middle of it. And I think the deal was that the roof had leaked, and at one point it was wood floors, but they'd all rotted out. So now it was just dirt. We were like, like, I wonder if we could turn that into an office space, and if we would like those tenants better than we did back when we were doing housing. And so we were scared, could we lease it and for how much? So we brought in partners who are like, well, we need office space. So why don't we be like business partners and we'll rent? So we had enough to break even for the mortgage. So that's how we kind of took our first baby steps, because I'm telling y'all, I'm scared of taking all my first steps. That's how we took our baby step into like multi-tenant properties, and it went great. We office here now. It's actually where I'm at now, although I just told someone they could have our space, so we may get kicked out. But anyway, so that was our first space, and it was super low maintenance because nobody's here to use a toilet at midnight. So it doesn't matter if it breaks down, like it was just so much lower maintenance that we loved that. So then we started trying to buy buildings, and all these old crotchety people, they won't sell you their building, or they think they're worth like what it is to already have it fixed up. So we started buying land, and we're like, what if we took this one piece of property and put 3 houses on it? And then it was the whole thing. If the zoning isn't right, the city's not going to let you, the lots are too small. So it's like, let's just go talk with them. So we walked into the city and we said, here's land we want to buy. Here's what we want to do. And it was shocking. They were like, we'll do whatever we can to make that happen. They gave us right of way. They gave us free land, basically, because they wanted the money to be invested in downtown. They were so positive when we left there, it scared us. We were like, why do they want us to do this so bad? And all of the developers in town and all the realtors were like, y'all are crazy, you're gonna lose your butt. But we did our first development deal. It was 3 HUD houses, and we tore them down and we turned them into 9 townhomes. And then slowly, like, we started meeting the people across the street, and they sold us their house, and they're like, oh, and that's a rental house, and they sold us that house. So now in that area, we've built 16 townhomes. And we've acquired some more dirt this in 2019, and we put 2 lots together, and we moved the old house to a different property, and we built a 20 loft mixed use building with commercial on the bottom, residential lofts on top. And that one, we were like, we're going to GC it ourselves. Like, we're fiercely independent women. We know what we're doing. Whew, everything you can imagine went wrong. First off, our architect said that they were going to fire themselves because they didn't think we were qualified to do the job, who also is in our office building. So I was a little awkward. And then my framer quit the job like 3/4 of the way into it. COVID pandemic happened. IKEA shut down, which is where we bought our cabinets, and we couldn't get them delivered. Like, it was a mess. My husband used to say, honey, what are you doing today? I was like, well, I got to get to the job site and get in the fetal position so everybody can like start kicking the crap out of me, because that's what it felt like in the middle of it. And so when we were done with it, people would say, do you think you'll ever do it again? And I said, well, it's kind of like after you have a child, people are like, do you want another one? Like, well, if I have to answer that now, the answer is no. But if you give me some time, I might change my mind. And so we started leasing it up. It leased up really fast. It hit the target market, which was the professionals at A&M. We say this is where grown-up Aggies go to live. We don't have to have amenities because the downtown is the amenity. And it was just a success. And so we were like, if we're spending all of our time building buildings, there's not enough time to go find more deals. So after we built that building, like, there was this lull. We had no houses to flip. We had no properties to develop because it took so much energy trying just to survive building the building. And so that's where we were like, we got to do a mindset shift. And that's really like, it's kind of been like hockey stick this last year. And, we've read the book Vivid Vision. If y'all haven't, you should. We made a Vivid Vision. Here, let's see if I can see. There it is hanging on my wall. That's our Vivid Vision. And part of that was we need to hire someone who can run all these job sites. And we were like, but how are we going to pay for them? Like, he's going to have his livelihood depending on us, which is a huge burden. And so we're like, well, all these contractors have already charged us 10% to be a GC. So we'll just charge the 10% otherwise that pays for his salary. Plus, it was the benefit of him managing our flips, which there was never enough margin to hire a GC for a flip. Like, I mean, I see on HGTV, they make those $100,000 and $200,000 profits, but that ain't happening here. I don't know if we're doing it wrong or what, but that is not reality for us. And then when you take taxes off the top of that, and so it was the added benefit of basically getting someone to manage our flips for free. We just had to do enough development deals to pay for his salary. And it has, I mean, why did it take so long for us to do that? I mean, right now we're fixing to break ground on 10,000 more square foot of a mixed use building. We're under contract for another 15,000. We just made an offer on one that we're going to do another 15,000. We have 3 more offers out, and like it has just exploded. And the majority of that was just that whole concept of who, not how, you know, like it's not, we kept saying, how can we do this? How can we do this? And it just totally turned into who can we get on our team that lets us spend our time in our zone of genius. And it's so much better. Like there's so much less stress because even though what we're doing is hard, it's what we love doing. So like, it doesn't feel hard. And so that's really what we've been focused on in the last, I would say 18 months, but definitely for this year is just trying to acquire as many properties as we can. Now, obviously you got to have cash for that, right? Like all of our deals, we finance with a construction loan that is going to automatically term out. So on our development deals, we'll do a 2-year interest only. And then it automatically rolls into like a 520 or 525, sometimes a 725. Like we'll try and get as long as we can. And the goal is once we get through, it's built and leased. And then about a year after that, we'll refinance it to something that's a lower rate, better term, take some of our cash back out of it because the construction loan is 75%. We haven't been able to get better than that. But when we refinance it, we can get 80 to 85%. And so that's how we finance it. But we still have to come up with the 25%. So the reason I told you the story about those entrepreneurs, like we've kind of just tried to put ourselves in a position where we can be around people with money. And so now, I mean, they trusted me to work for them. Now they've sold their business. They sit at home and do, I don't know what they do. And they invest in our deals. And then they refer us to other people to raise money to invest in our deals. So we don't do any syndications. We don't have to do any of the SEC stuff because it's all private money, friends and family. So the money that we raise is through probably 4 or 5 different individuals, and we all have a personal connection with them so that we don't have to do like the fancy syndication and fund documentation.
So with all of that said, how did you find your GC that you hired? Because when you're taking on somebody that's not a small salary and it's that important of a role, how did you find that person and how did you decide this is them?
This is them. It's a good question because we spent a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure it out. The first thing we did is we ultimately wanted someone who could play that integrator role. If y'all have read Traction, how they had like, we were the visionaries, we needed an integrator. So rather than hiring for like a superintendent, we said, let's hire for this integrator role that if everything works out, that's eventually where they'll end up. And then we told our GCs that we had relationship with, we told some subs, hey, we're looking. We had resumes come to us and like just nothing that seemed all that interesting. We told a few of our suppliers, but honestly, we didn't tell a lot of people because we were still scared. It was almost like the more you talk about it, the more you commit yourself to it. And we were super nervous. And I'm telling you guys, we did a year-end like gold meeting plan. And one of them was to hire someone by April 30th. Kid you not, we are in our lumber company on April 27th. And our main salesperson who I'm like, hey, here are our house plans. You do the takeoffs. You tell me what my lumber package is going to be. You size the windows. Like we put a lot of jobs onto our suppliers because, well, we're not that great at it. And so we leverage our suppliers probably a lot more than other GCs do. So I was in there and I was like, dude, you seem cranky a lot. Like you're not happy anymore. And I swear to God, he said, you know what? Y'all should hire me to run your projects. And I was like, why are you saying that? And he said, you know, I've always wanted to be on that side of construction. He had been at this company for 12 years. It's like, wow. Always wanted to be on that side of construction, but I got stuck in this. Like I had to have a job, I had kids, I had to have a salary, and I see what y'all are doing and I love what y'all do. And, you know, it was when it was in COVID and people were yelling at him because they couldn't get lumber. And like, it was just not a fun time to be there. And so we started talking to him in April, and then we hired him in July. That's how long it took. And we just started having lunches with them. We started asking questions. What do you think this is going to be like? What do you think you're going to be good at? What do you think it's going to be like to work with two women? How's your wife feel about you working with two women? And we just went slow and easy until it was like, we just can't come up with the reason to say no. And so we put it out there, and really it came back to us. I feel like we set ourselves up for the opportunity, but who knows? It could have been dumb luck.
It's interesting you say that. I've heard a lot of people when we talk about hiring, there's the options for Indeed and all these different websites, ZipRecruiter and things. And they always go back to, I ended up hiring through my network of people. And it's interesting because you think, oh, there's nobody that I know. And I have a couple opening spots right now that we keep saying there's nobody that we know. But now that you've told that story and we sit and we think about, okay, who do we interact with that maybe they would be a right fit? So starting to say out loud, we talked about this in Maui, to say out loud the things that we need and that we're looking for, and then they come to you. Yes. So I think there's something to be said with that. Katie, we've got a couple questions going through the chat over here. Somebody's asking best advice for starting out and starting without capital.
Yeah. So my best advice is like, take action. So I know that sounds like, well, duh, if I knew what to do, I would be taking action. But my whole philosophy is, I don't know if y'all have driven boats or whatever, but when you're trying to get up to the dock and your engine is off, like, it is so hard to steer the boat. It has no momentum. It doesn't know what direction you're trying to go. But as soon as you engage the throttle and the boat just starts moving a little bit, redirecting is so easy. I'm telling you, that is how life is. So if you don't have capital, find someone who does. And say, even if you are working for free, I'm telling you, it is not about the money. It is about the momentum. So if you say, hey, I will run this project with you, for you, alongside of you, like, we have to get tile. We got to go to Home Depot and get it. Those are all pain in the butt things. If you just say, I'll be with you, you make the decision, I'll get it to the job site. Like, I'll run this job site however you want for free, to learn the process, to get around other people who are already doing it and who make the next step feel easy. The money, you will figure that part out. Now, if you have the ability to save some money, get you a little reserve, because you do not, even if you can get in a deal with no money, you do not want to be in a deal without any money, because something is going to go wrong. First thing that went wrong in my little condo is that toilet started leaking and we had to change it out, and the water heater went out. And I think that was like in the first couple of months we owned it. And so it was probably $1,000 worth of work just like that. Like, you can't do it without any money, but it doesn't take money to build momentum. So my deal is, the education is way more important than the money, even though the purpose of doing it is for the money. It's the education where the value is. So find a way to get involved in somebody else's deal, to get the experience, to be around the people who are doing it, and opportunity will just present. It's just like magic. It just happens. It'll present itself.
That's great advice. It's the same thing I tell everybody. You can see my sign behind us. So just don't say you can't, say you can and do it. You've just got to get started. The next question is, do you do a lot of 1031 exchanges when you do your flips?
No, we did no 1031 exchanges. And the primary reason is, a flip does not qualify for a 1031 exchange. We only own that. The thing that makes a flip really work, if you're going to do volume and make it your job, is you need to do it quickly and you need to keep churning your money. And so 1031s, you have to own them for a period of time. And then you can go into the light kindness. So I guess it qualifies for that. But flipping is really, like, I don't want to say this because, I pride myself as being a real estate investor. Flipping is really not real estate investing. So all of those, you don't get depreciation benefits, you don't get passive income benefits, you don't get capital gain, lower tax rate benefits, and you don't get 1031 exchange benefits. It truly is a job in the industry that'll let you learn a whole lot about it, and like, go crazy on the creativity side, and let you build pots of cash pretty quickly. But it really is not real estate investing.
And you gain a lot of skills that you can use moving forward, for sure.
And yes. And you get access to a lot of people who you can trust when it is your property and you are going to own it long-term, who can take care of stuff for you.
So Amy's asking you what the process is like for getting that zoning and permitting on your own that you were doing when you were moving into that different type of asset class.
Yeah. So it varies vastly depending on where you're at. But I think it's pretty safe to say, as a general rule of thumb, if you are doing what the city wants, it is not too hard of a process. So every city has a master plan, is what they call it. And they pay all this money to these consultants to generate a 10 to 20-year master plan. And they update it about every 7 to 15 years. Get the master plan and read it. It will tell you where they want development to occur, what kind of a development they want there. Now, we didn't know that on the front end. We just blindly said, I wonder if they'll let us build townhomes down here. And we went in and talked to them. And that's when we found out they were so excited. Well, the reason they were so excited is that was part of their master plan to develop out downtown, and they needed housing down there. And we were just dumb and crazy enough to be the ones who were like, I wonder if we could build housing down there. And so if you do what the city wants, it's not hard. So the first thing to do is call development services. They can have different names. It's going to be in the planning and development side. So every city kind of has two pieces and they don't really work together, but people refer to them as the same. Half is called planning and development. Those are the guys who are doing zoning, and they're taking things to P&Z, which is planning and zoning, for approval into city council. And then the other half that more people interact with are like the building permit side. So they'll review plans. They're the ones who give you the permits. They're the jack wagons that come out and tell you whether or not you passed city inspection. And so you want to be on the planning and development side. Those are the guys that you want to go sit down and say, here's my dream, here's the property, what can we do? And they'll tell you, here are your issues. It's not zoned for that. And you say, okay, so what would it take to be able to zone it that way? Sometimes you have to change zoning, or they have these like special little category zonings that they'll do just for that property if you're doing something that they want done. And then they'll pull up the utility map and they'll show you, because what can be expensive about rezoning is if you have to bring water a long way, or sewer a long way, or electricity, like it will eat up all your profits on a small development in a heartbeat. So they'll have that map right there in our town. They just throw it up on the screen, and they'll have the different engineers there, and they kind of talk, yeah, we can make that happen. Yeah, we'll do that for you. Oh no, that's gonna, like you have to pay for that. And then from that point, it's a negotiation. So when they say, nope, you've got to pay for that, you say, well, if you want me to develop it, you're going to have to pay for that. And so it kind of becomes this negotiation and trying to figure out how bad they really want it. And so it is all up for negotiation, regardless of what this. The only guy you can't really negotiate with is that jackwagon fire marshal. Like they think they're God in the development world. So there's not much flexibility there. Pretty much everything else is negotiable.
Thanks, Katie. That was a really, really great answer. So Lauren is asking, how do you structure deals with family and friends? I have two family members who want to invest with me, and they have way more cash than me. I'm the one who can find the deals, but I don't know how to write up the contracts and show them how everything will work.
Hey, will you drop in there, and then Heather, you tell me what she says. What kind of deals do you want to do? Are you wanting to do flips, or are you wanting to do long term? And I can kind of give you an idea of how we'd like structured.
She's wanting to work on commercial deals.
Okay, so if it's something that you're going to buy and hold, you can, the answer is you can structure it however you want. I know that's not useful, but that is the reality. So what we would typically do is say, we get some portion of the deal because we found it, we're bringing it to you, we're giving you the opportunity, and we're going to manage the process. And that amount depends on how profitable the deal is. So the reality is your investors are going to want some percent. So let's say it's like 10% cash on cash. So if your deal is really fat and it has a whole lot of cushion, then you can say, we're going to keep 40% and we're going to give you 60%, or you can say 50-50. But the reality is, for some of these smaller deals, it's more like 80-20, 70-30 is kind of the split. So you'll get 10, 20, 30% just because you brought it. You don't have to have any cash for that. And then what's left over is the money that has to be raised. So if you have to raise, say, $100,000, then you can put in however much you want. So if you have 20,000, you can put 20,000 in, and then you get that percentage of it. And then they'll put the other 80,000 in. So if they put all the money in, then they'll get all the 70%, you get all of the 30%. So it's a little, for us, it was a little disheartening, because like you work so hard, but if you don't put any of the money in and you only own 30% of the deal, like the cash flow can add up slowly. But again, it's about building momentum. The more projects you have, the more your money is diversified, the more opportunity you have for future appreciation, the more opportunity you have for if things go wrong, it doesn't bring your whole portfolio down. So it's probably better to own 30% of a deal than 0% of a deal for sure. And it's probably better to own 30% of 5 deals over time than 100% of one deal, because if something happens in that one deal, like it's your whole portfolio. So that's how we've structured it with long-term assets. On flips, we say, look, we'll bring the deal, we'll manage it, we'll sell it. You bring all the cash and we split it 50-50. So flips are a lot cleaner. They're short term, but the long-term assets, like you don't get as much if you can't bring the money, because at the end of the day, they have to get a return that makes sense for them to put their money with you instead of the stock market or with someone else.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different structures. And again, bringing Maui back to this, we listened to every person there had a different way that they structured these deals. So it really is sky's the limit on how you can do that. I hear people with long-term structuring 50-50. I hear people with long-term getting, like you said, 20%. It really just depends on what you can quote unquote negotiate. And you've got to remember how much of your time is going into it, because it's going to take a lot of time and you'll easily get frustrated, like Katie was saying, with all the work that you're doing if you only have a small percentage of something. So
And
that may
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and making sure that those deals are big enough for it to be
That's
worth
right.
your time is part of that.
And that's the hard part, is there's and we kind of play in that no man's land. Like they're bigger than small. So our deals are typically 2.5 to say 5 million, but they're small compared to those guys, doing $50 million apartment complexes and storage. So there's not as much margin. But the other thing is to know your investor. What are they more interested in? Are they more interested in cash flow? Are they more interested in getting an asset that's going to appreciate over time? And they don't really need the cash flow right now. That gives you more flexibility if that's their perspective, because the reality is right now in this current market, cash flow is getting harder and harder. And there's a lot more opportunity for appreciation, and with inflation appearing to be coming and already here, like it's great because it lets your property appreciate, but it is taking a hit on cash flow. So everybody's kind of readjusting right now. So it's kind of a good time to be in and negotiate, because even the stuff that just worked a year ago, like investors were wanting 10 and 12% cash on cash. I can't give them that anymore. We're trying to do 8 and 10% cash on cash right now. The good news is they can't go get 10 and 12% really from anyone else. And the nice thing about friends, that friends and family, which by the way, it's not our family, it's our friends. Because yeah, it's just better that way. With our friends, like what they love about investing with us is they know us and they know they can trust us. And I don't care how good that syndication is and how many people have made money on it. Like there's still always this Bernie Madoff in the back of your mind. Like, he had that Ponzi scheme going for like 20 years before they found him out. And so it really is hard to make up for truly knowing and trusting someone. So use that to your advantage. Like when you're going to talk to your private investor, say, yeah, you can invest in that deal, but truly, how well do you know those guys? They don't even know your name. Like somebody just told you about them. So like use that leverage as, like you can trust me, and yeah, things may go wrong and crap may hit the fan. But if it does, at least like, me, and I'm going to do the best I can to get us out of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great piece of advice. Kobe's saying bye. Bye, Kobe. Katie, thank you so much for sharing your story and all of your experience with us today. Where can everybody find you?
Good question. Look, I'm going to drop my stuff here, but I am on Facebook at Renovation Wranglers, Instagram at Renovation Wranglers, and you can email me. It's just my name, Katie Neeson at me.com. I'd love to do whatever I can to help y'all. It's been an honor, and I love talking real estate. As you can tell, I'm not at a loss for words. So would love to connect and reach out and help y'all however I can. Like take action and make it happen, man.
Yes. Thank you so much, Katie. We appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.